Morning, it's Tuesday, July 2nd. Parshas Matos Masei. So first of all, I have a few announcements to make. I'm dedicating this Shiur. Yesterday was the outside of a good friend over here, Benny's father, Yaakov Ben Ezra.
Thank you very much.
So he's starting his second year of mourning. Like, do you mourn for a father after a year? So we're in the period right now of Shavuos B'Tammuz, between Shavuos B'Tammuz and Tisha B'Av, and we're mourning the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. And you know the famous story with Napoleon, that he was walking on the streets and he heard the mourning, and he says, a nation that mourns after so many thousands of years for a destruction of a temple, surely it will be rebuilt. So there's a double concept of how much you're supposed to mourn. Because it also brings down the Gemara. Good morning, Dov. It also brings down the Gemara that you shouldn't over mourn. So that's why after 12 months, you stop saying Kaddish, whether 11 or 12, and other laws which pertain to mourning, stops after a year. But a person never really stops mourning for a parent, and which is similar to the Beis Hamikdash. The other announcement I wanted to make is that this will be the last time, B'li Neder, that I'm going to be filming my Shiur. I started a year ago. I tried it for a year, and there are disadvantages for me filming. First of all, in the last few months, 3-4 months, when I didn't film it, nobody complained. So obviously it's not that important. And those people that come to the Shiur, they tell me they enjoy it. Those that don't, I never hear from them. So, and it also limits me because I'm consciously looking at the camera and I'm worried that it's recording and not recording, and it distracts me a bit. So I will not be recording. It was a pleasure doing it for a year. And I've had over close to 2,500 people view it, and it was a schus. But we're going to be stopping that. So today is probably the first year anniversary of me doing this. So I'm going to stop it. There is a Gemara, since we're in the 3-week period. There is a Gemara which says like this. It's the Gemara Moed Cotton. One of the Masechtas in Shas, and the Gemara says, Tanu Rabbanan, Ve'ili koren she'ein misachen. These are the things that you tear, kriya. You rend your garments, or you rent your garments. You can, either way is correct, either with a D or with a T. You tear your garments, and you cannot sew it back up. And it goes through a list of things that you have to tear your clothes for. Ha'kora alov v'alima, whoever tears on a father and mother. I'm sorry, Ted. You're always at a disadvantage, because when you miss the first 2-3 minutes, you don't know what I'm talking about. It takes you 10 minutes to figure out what I'm talking about.
I'll figure out what's
okay. We were talking mainly about you. So it would have been interesting. So anyway, and Val Rabo Shlim the Torah, and if you tear for a person that taught you Torah, Val Nosi, and for a Nosi, for a king, and it goes through a whole bunch of things, and then it comes to the part which I want to talk about today is 3 things. Val Ore Yehuda, on the cities of Yehuda. There used to be Malchei Yehuda, Malchei Yisrael, so on the cities of Yehuda. I'm not exactly sure what that is today, but anyway, on those cities, if you see those cities in destruction, you have to tear your clothes. Val Hamikdash, and on the place where the Beis Hamikdash was, Val Yerushalayim, and on Yerushalayim. So you have to tear your clothes. Morning.
What's the worst to you if we bring them in?
Well, if it was in the wintertime, I would say a lot. But in the summertime, you're welcomed and it's appreciated. But hopefully, we'll
You'll be okay.
We'll be okay. You're the group from Baltimore? Welcome to Atlantic City. Okay. So, now, today, we're going to talk about it today. We're going to talk a little bit about this whole business of tearing clothes, why we tear it, and when we tear it, and who should not tear it, and stuff like that. And I think it's appropriate that we do these things in a time when we should be mourning the Beis HaMikdash. So the reason we don't tear when we see the cities of Yehuda is because most of us, especially nowadays, when you arrive in Lud airport, and when you take a taxi, and when you come in, where do you come into? You come into Yerushalayim. So you see Yerushalayim before you even see the Ora Yehuda. So we don't tear our clothes and see Ora Yehuda because we've already seen Yerushalayim. So.
But you said for Yerushalayim.
But technically, you're supposed to tear when you see Yerushalayim. Now, just for a moment, let's talk about where do you tear? On the left side or the right side? So we all know, especially, unfortunately, those that lost already a parent, that when you tear for a parent, you tear on the left side. Why the left side?
Heart.
Because heart. What does that mean, heart? I mean, I know what heart means. So what does it have to do with the heart?
Connected with your life.
Well, there's a few reasons why we tear clothes. Many reasons. There's no definitive answer. The reason, but like Benny says, that your heart is hurting, so you tear the place that's closest to your heart. There used to be a pagan custom, and maybe even not pagan, that people used to tear their flesh, and that you're not allowed to do. So we tear the clothes. Now,
the Muslim, they do.
Actually, we're not allowed to even tear clothes. Why aren't we allowed to tear clothes? You're not allowed to destroy anything. So that's why we do it by hand, because you're not allowed to take machinery or whatever and cut your clothes. That's wasting. There's a big prohibition against wasting anything: clothes, food, time, anything. Also brought down that why do you tear? You lose a father or a mother. Why do you tear? Because you now have lost the ability to fulfill one of the 10 commandments of Kaveh Desavichas Samechos. So 10% of the Aseret Adibras you've lost. But that's not really always correct, because the mitzvah of honoring a father and mother applies even after they're dead. After they die, there's ways you can honor them, honor their memory, and bring them nachas, so to speak.
They said Gemilut Chasadim. What's a Gemilut Chasadim? For a dead, because for a live you might expect next time you do
Chesed Shalemis. Chesed Shalemis is when you do a kindness that you do not expect return. Now, so there is a question in the Gemara, like, when should you tear? When you're coming into Yerushalayim, at what point do you tear? When you're at the border, or at what point, or maybe even before? So the Gemara says like this. The Gemara says that the time to start, it says Echad Hashameya, whether somebody heard about the destruction, Ve'echad Haroa, or whether actually somebody saw the destruction, Kivin She'agia L'Tzofim Korah. Once you get to the part which is called Tzofim, and Tzofim was actually a point, the Gemara brings down this language a few times in Shas, that Tzofim is the part where you can actually see the city of Yerushalayim, and at that point you're supposed to tear.
It's a mountain or something?
It's a hard Tzofim, right? So it's probably a place high up that you could see Yerushalayim. Yeah. Now, when this was written, Yerushalayim looked a little different than it does today. Now, there's so much building, so much development has been. So if you're at that point today, do you have to tear? Because technically you are within the so-called radius of where Yerushalayim could have been seen, or do you physically have to see it? So that that's a question that the rabbis debate, and and the argument is given that even if you physically can't see it, but if you're in a spot, for example, like let's say there would be a rule that there's a bracha that you make when you see a big yam. So if we're sitting here on this block, and we're within we could have seen the ocean from here, but now there's buildings in the way. Does that bracha apply? Can you make that bracha now? So the same thing is, so the Gemara, good morning. So the Gemara says, because the Gemara says, Echad Hashameya ve'echad Haroa, whether somebody hears or somebody, what does it mean hears? It means he understands, he's given to understand that the Beis Hamikdash, somebody in the olden days would get to a point where he already heard, where the news got out already, that Yerushalayim was destroyed, he already has to tear his clothes. So from here we see that you physically don't have to see it. You don't have to see it. So
destruction means the building and the houses and everything? That
you saw Yerushalayim, yeah, that the city is in ruins.
Yerushalayim is a beautiful city.
Okay, so we'll talk about that in a minute if we get to it. Others say no, that in those days it was sufficient that if you heard about it, that you would tear your clothes, because it was such a traumatic shock to you that the Beis Hamikdash is no longer, Yerushalayim is no longer around, so you would tear your clothes. But today, Bizman Hazeh, we're all jaded. Like how many of us walk around in Atlantic City thinking about, I heard the Yerushalayim was destroyed, the Beis Hamikdash is not there already. So we're sort of jaded. So they say that unless you physically see the destruction, that you should not tear your clothes. Now, the argument between whether you should make it, whether you actually saw it or not, by the way, the difference would be, let's say a blind person. There's a blind person. Cannot see it. We have many brachas that we say, if you see a king, you make a bracha. Like I said before, if you see a large ocean, you make a bracha. There's so many things. We see lightning, we make a bracha.
The same thing with the shemiyah.
Excuse me?
The same thing with shemiyah, hearing, like shofar.
Right. So what we're talking about hearing now, seeing. So the question is, does a blind person have to tear kriya for destruction? Now, I don't know the halacha, but I would suspect that, God forbid, a blind person lost a parent, he would still have to tear kriya. So the question is, why do we tear kriya in general, and specifically, why do we rend our garments when we hear or we see something bad? So is it a cause or is it an effect? In other words, is it a symptom or is it something that we do because we're in so much pain that we just rip our clothes? Or is it something that we have to rip our clothes to show an expression that we're mourning, but maybe we're not motivated so much to tear it, but there's a rule, there's a halacha, tear your clothes, because this is the way you're going to make yourself sad. So again, or you're so sad that you're doing it because from the inside you're compelled to do so, or we compelled to tear so that we should feel that way. So that would, using these two theories of why we tear our clothes, we could say that is the differences, whether if you just heard about it. So if it's an expression that comes from within, that you have so much sorrow, you have so much anguish, so it makes no difference. If you just heard about it, if it causes you, but nowadays, that was in the olden days. When you heard it, it was so much anguish. Today, we're not today, I tell you the Beis Hamikdash is not there anymore, nobody is really motivated to do that, so then you don't tear. But if it's something that even though you're not motivated, you have to do it to bring yourself, to bring upon yourself the anguish, the tsar, then maybe you should do it also. Now, the question is nowadays whether we tear our clothes. So it used to be a time where if you saw Yerushalayim and you had to tear your clothes, but the Mishnah Berurah brings down that only applies in the times when Israel is controlled by the Arabs. In those times, that's considered Yerushalayim is destroyed. What does it mean Yerushalayim is destroyed? Because they built new buildings. So when you say it's destroyed, it means it's not under Jewish reign anymore. It's not under Jewish sovereignty. But in the times when Israel is under Jewish sovereignty, like today, you don't. I'm going to finish in 60 seconds. Okay. We do not tear we're tearing our clothes. There's one exception. The exception is that when you actually see the place of the Beis Hamikdash where it was, and unfortunately we know where it was today. There's not too many things we know really where it is, but we know where the point of Beis Hamikdash was, and we know the mosque which is over there. So the halacha is that when you see that, you have to tear your clothes. In fact, you have to make a bracha, Baruch Atah Hashem, Dayinu Emes. You don't say Hashem Elokeinu Melech Olam like on another occasion, but you should say that bracha it's called without Shem Malchus, and you have to do it every 30 days. If you haven't seen the destruction, every 30 days you have to make it. When you see the Mokom HaMikdash. No, I don't think so. There is a way around, though, and a lot of people do this, and it's a loophole in the law that people, for the first time when they see it, they do it on a Shabbos. So on Shabbos, you don't tear your clothes, and once you didn't tear your clothes, once when you saw it already, you didn't tear your clothes. It was a Shabbos. Then afterwards, you don't tear clothes. Just like, for example, if somebody hears of bad news that one of his relatives died, and it's in the 30 days, you have to tear your clothes if it's still in 30 days. But if you heard it on Shabbos, you don't tear your clothes, and then after Shabbos, it's already the 31st day, you don't tear. Because once, when you initially heard it, you couldn't do it because it was Shabbos. That's called a Shmua Karova. So when it becomes a Shmua Rechoka, a far hearing, that means it's past the 30 days.
Past 30, but that's the second day.
Excuse me?
Let's say.
Yeah. If it's still the 30 days, yes. But if it's the 31st day, you don't do it anymore. So the same thing over here. If you saw it for the first time on a Shabbos, then afterwards there's a loophole not to do it anymore. Anyway, we should all be zocha and never have to do these things, and the Mashiach should come. Have a great day. Bye.